It's time for another edition of the Daily Racing Form Weekend Preview. I am Gino Buccola alongside my good friend and co-host Alexa Zepp. Alexa, we're going to head on out to Tampa Bay Downs for a lot of our focus this weekend. Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks points on the line. It's such a fun time of the year because we will see each of these tracks will get a weekend or a couple weekends where they're kind of the spotlight. They have the big racing, and that's going to be the case this weekend. 4 stakes races over at Tampa Bay Downs.
Yeah, it's exciting. I actually haven't been to Tampa Bay Downs. I've been to a lot of racetracks, but I haven't been there yet, but I'd love to go. But yeah, they have the Sam F. Davis this weekend for Derby points.
So for the entire format of our show today, in this first segment, we're going to go through the Sam F. Davis, which is race number 11 on Saturday. We'll do a horse-by-horse preview of that one. Then in the second segment, we'll hit on the other 3 stakes races at Tampa on Saturday. We'll do some quick hit previews of those. Then we'll finish up with the Oaklawn feature race this weekend on Saturday. It's the Buccola for fillies and mares, older fillies and mares, and we'll get into that in our final segment. But first up, let's see who's going to be getting some Kentucky Derby points this weekend out at Tampa Bay Downs. Shout out to producers Mike and Rich in the back, pulling the strings like always. Alexa, let's start with a really talented maiden. The number 1, Camp Hale, has never won, but he's finished second 3 times in a row. He's been behind some really good horses like Guns Loaded, who came back to win the Mucho Macho Man. He finished in front of a horse named Patch Adams, who won next time out with a huge speed figure. Finished in front of a horse named Ain't No Disco. So while he has not won, he's definitely faced some pretty good company, and he's kind of an interesting long shot if you're looking for like a horse to use in the bottom of your tries and supers.
He is an interesting long shot. I'm kind of torn about this horse. I actually include him underneath in my selections, but I don't love a horse that has a case of second-itis. Like, that's never something you really want to see.
No.
But it does look like he prefers to be like on or near the lead. As you can see, Timeform US does predict that he can get that position. But he did kind of fade a bit at the end, and now they're giving him more distance. So interesting, though, because his speed figures are competitive with other favorites in here.
I think the 2 Treaty of Rome is a really nice fit in here for trainer Chad Brown. Alexa, you've seen the progression from him in each of his starts. He's improved based on speed figures. And in the most recent race, in the Mucho Macho Man, he was a really good second. And he almost ran down a horse named Guns Loaded, who was basically loose on the lead. So even though the race didn't shape up all that well for him, he still ran really well to finish second that day. What do you think about Treaty of Rome?
Yeah, he did run really well. He lost by a neck at 11-1 odds. Today, morning line is 6. Like I said, improving every start. Trainer wins stakes races 25% of the time. So I do think this horse makes sense at 6-1. I would want those odds, though. I wouldn't want to play him lower than that.
John Hancock, more like Herbie Hancock. Am I right? John Hancock is very quick, cleared the field in that career debut, half sibling to a horse named Speech, who is a grade 1 winner who won the Ashland. So, I mean, this is one of the real interesting horses in here, Alexa, because he has to stretch out from 6 furlongs to a mile and a 16th. That's not easy, but he has a ton of ability and a ton of early speed.
Yeah, and when his trainer, Brad Cox, does stretch his horses out from a sprint to a route, that wins at a super alarming rate 37% of the time, and that was with a big sample size, so that is pretty significant. My only thing is the odds. Like, playing a horse who's only run one time at 3-1.
Exactly.
I think this is a difficult race, so for me, it was hard to play him for that reason.
You have to really like him in here to be able to swallow that really short price, right?
Yeah.
Based on what he's done. He could win this race, but it's going to be shorter than what his odds should be if he does. Yeah. Let's move to Dr. Ruben M. He exits a really live race, Alexa. He'll have to improve to get better and to probably compete with this group, but he was behind Cole Battle, who came back to win the Smarty Jones at Oaklawn. He was behind Speed King, who came back to win the Southwest. So the race he exits has become very live so far.
It has. I actually was thinking, I'm not a huge fan of him in here. I thought the 1, Camp Hale, should be 12-1 odds, and the 4 should be 20-1. I thought their odds should be a little bit swapped in here. He disappointed when they stepped him up in class last out. So, I mean, he's been improving and learning some, but I don't think in a super significant way that would make him competitive against this field.
The key for a lot of horses in here, if you're looking at the graph below us, the Timeform US pace projector, you can notice that The speed in here will be interesting because there's going to be a few horses pushing the pace. Dr. Ruben M could be one that maybe gets caught up a little too much in that pace battle early on. What do we do with Gateskeeper, who comes in off of runner-up and then a third place effort? So he's still a maiden coming in from Oaklawn Park. What do we do with him in this spot?
I passed on him. I thought his first race looked promising and then kind of returned and disappointed. Wasn't anything special. And from what I see, there wasn't a big excuse for that effort.
So both the number 6, Owen Almighty, and then the number 8, Naughty Rascal, were in the very same race, the Pasco, on January 11th. In that race, Alexa, Owen Almighty actually crossed the wire first, but in the middle of the running of the race, he cut off one of his rivals, so he got disqualified and placed behind that rival. Naughty Rascal was put up to win because of that. Now, Owen Almighty was making his first start back of the year, so he was probably shaking off some of the rust there. What do you think about him in this spot?
He's the one to beat in here. Really strong horse, and I'm excited to see them have a rematch.
Yeah, blinkers on, second start back off the bench. He's logical. He fits. He just makes a whole ton of sense in here. Poster, undefeated, 3 for 3. He won his first 2 starts on the turf. Then he went over and won the Grade 2 Remsen last time out. Thought it was interesting that his rider, Flavian Pratt, who was aboard him in the Remsen, he actually goes to ride John Hancock, which you don't see, when you've been aboard a horse and won a graded stakes on them. Usually you stay with that horse. What do you think about Poster in here coming off that graded stakes win?
I like Poster a lot. Only graded stakes winner in here. Dornoch actually won the Remsen in 2023 and then continued on to be a contender in the Kentucky Derby and then win the Belmont, which is the third leg of the Triple Crown. For Poster, though, the Remsen was first time out on the dirt. So this being the second time out on the surface, I wouldn't be surprised to see improvement. I think 4-1 odds are really nice on him, and I hope they stay that way. I think it's a play.
We talked a little bit about Naughty Rascal a moment ago because he was the horse that actually defeated Owen Almighty, but he didn't cross the wire first. He was put up, and he didn't really have anything to do with the DQ. He was just the one that benefited from it because Owen actually impeded a different horse there. So Naughty Rascal is one of those fun horses to root for, Alexa, because I don't know if he's going to be a Kentucky Derby winner down the line, but he's honest. He can run on different surfaces. He's pretty quick. He's a hard-knocking horse that you like to root for. Is he in a little too deep here, though?
Maybe. He's consistently improving speed figures. My main concern with him is the distance because he is stretching out the longest distance he's ever tried. And I think he seemed to just do a little bit better on those shorter distances, but definitely a very talented horse.
Completely agree with you. I think he'll end up being more of like a 7-furlong miler type horse overall, have a little more punch there. But you could understand why the connections keep trying because they want to see if they can get some Kentucky Derby points here. Smoke 'em Boy, the 9. Blinkers come on. Total wild card coming in from Camarero. Won his last 2 races by open lengths. Now comes into the Jose D'Angelo barn. What do you do with him?
Like you said, he's a wild card. Had a fire career so far in Puerto Rico. They've shipped him up to the U.S., try some real competition, but this is a huge ask, a huge step up. But interesting note, his sire, Catholic Boy, actually won the Remsen and then got second place in this stakes race back in 2018. So, he's going to try to follow in Dad's footsteps.
We round out the field with Very Bold, who finished 3rd in the Pasco. He actually crossed the wire 3rd, but was put up 2nd via the DQ that day, and he should be passing some horses late. What do you think about him?
Yeah, he's only won 1 out of 5 races, and while his figures are improving, they're probably not up to par with some of the tougher competitors in here. He lost his last 2 races by over 5 lengths, so I think too tough a spot.
And as we move to selections for this race, one thing I want to remind everybody, these are horses that are now on the road to the Kentucky Derby. So Saturday is not Kentucky Derby day. That means some of these horses are going to be pointing in prime to be their best on Kentucky Derby day. That means they may not be at their best. They may need a couple races to get there. So while we're looking at the big picture, we always want to look at the specific. Alexa, you're going to the 7. You put the 7 Poster on top of Owen Almighty. I'll throw the 2 Treaty of Rome in the mix at a fair price. But we get set for our first commercial break. We're not going to leave Tampa Bay Downs, though. When we return, we'll talk about some of the undercard stakes races. Fillies, they've got some Kentucky Oaks points up for grabs.